Hello, this is a short video I've prepared for the Global Health Collaborative at the University of Plymouth. And I'm hoping to encourage uh, people setting up international partnerships, even if there isn't much funding, or indeed, even if there isn't any money at all, because otherwise it may not get done, as this rather sad looking dog on the left indicates. So I'm going to give some examples, and because it's a short video, if you need more time on any particular slide, please pause the slide and look in your own time, as it were. So here's the abstract. You might need more time on this, but basically I'm saying it's possible to begin things and do so quite successfully, even across barriers of distance, language and culture, providing that some critical success factors are borne in mind and given a bit of work. Money may not be the only thing you need to do, and some of the other things can compensate for lack of money. So the first thing to say is some of these success factors might be viewed as bad news, not good news, but if you know about them, you can overcome them. So the first one is, of course, money. You would like to have it, but we don't know how much is absolutely essential. And quite a long way can be gone even without very much money. You can achieve quite a bit. Even using self-funding if you've got to kickstart the whole thing. So money plus at least some motivation gives you progress. And this is the way in which most research projects and established projects operate, the normal way. But there's an alternative, and that is to compensate for lack of money with a lot of motivation. And this is the way that more groundbreaking, less well established, or even completely new projects can begin. And with a lot of motivation, you can get quite a long way. So you don't always have to have money. Another important thing is trust with the people that you're working with and yourself, or your colleagues as well, of course. You're all in this together. You all, I hope, would want to make it work, but it needs to be taken step by step, normally speaking, especially if there are cultural differences involved, which there frequently are. As to cultural awareness, there's always more to learn. I'm certainly aware of this. I don't pretend to know all the answers, and everyone makes some mistakes in order to make progress, but at least be aware that cultural differences is an indication that you do need to work on learning about the other people's expectations and cultures. And indeed, they will be helped if they know a bit about yours. This is always true. Don't forget about it. Anthropology. Some folk may know what that's about. Others may dismiss it as a bit of a mixed bag. It's a discipline that covers hard science all the way through to much more soft cultural issues. This picture shows that given a set of facts or whatever we're presented with, it's often possible to interpret them in completely different ways. If you look at this picture, you may see a bird, or if you look at it a bit longer, you may see a goat. Just have a look if you can't see the two, and you'll see what I mean. So this sort of challenges the idea of objective facts. Certainly, people's presuppositions and their cultural backgrounds make a difference in how they interpret what's going on, and it's very important to bear that in mind. Okay, so when you're dealing with people outside your normal spheres of reference, as it were, another image I find helpful is to think about strata, layers, if you like, of behavior and culture. So up at the top, the visible, the most easily visible stuff, the topsoil, if you like, is what you see about the area and the people in a travel brochure. Underneath that, there's a bit deeper information you could get by staying in a hotel, for example, and having a holiday there. Underneath that is a bit of the sort of reality of living in the country as opposed to merely holidaying there. And you see more of that if you're able to stay with a family or work in a community there, which would be the next level down. Working always reveals a lot more than merely visiting, as I've found when I've worked in other countries as opposed to merely visiting them. And finally, and deepest really on this short introduction at least, is what you would see if within those communities something goes seriously wrong. Then and only then do you see what really motivates the people and how the culture that they bring with them influences everything that they think and do and expect. Now, the examples I'm going to bring are based upon Egypt, which has a cultural history of over 7,000 years. And it's been of interest to me ever since I was a little boy. In fact, I taught myself hieroglyphs and translated the hieroglyphs on the coffin that's in Plymouth City Museum, the box, which, even though the coffin had been there for 90 years, had not been done, although Professor Aidan Dodson had published them. So I translated them, and the box is now rejigging, in fact, the publication of it, which originally appeared on their website. Just to show you some sort of interest in the culture I'm going to be describing, because a lot of what happens today is based upon a cultural taproot which goes a very, very long way into the past. So I'm trained in sciences and cultural history. I started out as a physicist, and then I went to medical school at Barts and did some clinical work, worked in the NHS and industry and whatnot. Also, I've done a moral philosophy degree and sort of converted myself into an anthropologist through the years. So I feel I'm maybe more sensitive than some might be to cultural influences. In the past, Egypt was known as the Two Lands, and it's still very divided today in some respects, both geographically and culturally. There's rich and poor, there's Muslim and Christian, employed and unemployed, and the real Egypt as opposed to the tourist Egypt. And as I've said before, this is not my day job. So I'm going to run through quite quickly some projects I've been involved in. Initially, of course, I needed to find out what the needs were in a particularly dangerous situation that happened in Egypt back in 2013. And this has been the basis for everything that's happened since, in terms of dealing with the modern Egypt as opposed to the ancient Egypt. So in 2013, there was all sorts of civil unrest and violence in Egypt, which some may remember, due to change of presidents. And because many people disagreed with the situation, the political situation, there was big problems leading to violence and burnings and all sorts of things. Some of the people who were most affected by that were the Christian community, which is a minority community, because disaffected folk, often pro-Morsi extremists, couldn't really attack the army, so they had to go at the Christians instead, and presumably any other minority groups too. Christians form about 20% of the population in Egypt, even though the official figure is only about 10%, and it's a very old culture. So this is just a list of some of the damage. It's not especially relevant anymore. It's of historical interest and importance, but the situation was very bad. There was a curfew in Egypt at the time, and things were really tough. So I wanted to help if I could, and I decided to collect some gifts, and the question then arose how to get them there. Should I give what I collected to some international charity, in which case it might be wasted or sent to somewhere that we had no idea about here, or what? And I took advice and was advised to go myself and find out more, and then be able to report back, which is what I did, even though it was dangerous. First stop was in Cairo. Had to get into a guarded compound, past 2 tanks and 3 sets of steel gates to get a chance to ask advice at the headquarters of the Coptic Orthodox Church, which knew most about what areas had been damaged. This area was subsequently suicide bombed. This is where I went to, and I waited there 6 hours with a letter of introduction until somebody spotted me and found out, what I was there for, and took pity on this strange foreign man and went to tell the Pope, who's the head of the church and who is based at that building, or was in those days. And he very graciously gave me a personal audience, which was tremendous, because he was then able to direct me and to direct his bishops to help me get to the damaged areas, which were banned to journalists, even to the BBC. Their correspondent locally was Orla Gehring, who's a war correspondent. She wasn't allowed to go to the places that I subsequently visited. So I went to all sorts of different places. There's a list here. Some of you may know Egypt and may know some of these places. Many of them are in the middle of Egypt, which is hardly visited at all by tourists, partly because it's dangerous by bandits from Libya and other folk. This is on the waterfront in a rather rundown hotel on the Corniche at Alexandria. I was watching and filming tanks going through at 1 AM and 4 AM. This is the 1 AM one, when the streets were finally clearing for the curfew. In the most dangerous areas, I was protected by 7 police vehicles and 30 armed guards. And one area had to be recaptured by the army after 3 weeks. It was grim. Here are a couple of soldiers guarding me with automatic weapons. Here I am with some of the senior officers. The man on my left is the general governing this area, and if I'd been kidnapped, it would have been something of a diplomatic incident, even though I'm not of any intrinsic importance. It was an internationally dangerous time, or difficult time for visitors. On the right, you'll see some bags of human bones that were dug up by the extremists that captured this area, 3,000 of them. The chap in the white there is my Muslim driver, Mohammed, and on the left is another man with an automatic weapon. Of whom there were lots. I then went to a monastery in the Western Desert. The detail here isn't particularly important for present purposes, but that too is a dangerous area. And it was a dangerous journey because I had to go 20-kilometer distance across the Western Desert in the dark. There's no road, no lighting, nothing. And I've done the journey a number of times since, both in the daytime and the nighttime. And since I first made the visit, there have been 2 massacres on this road. Now, when I got back from this dangerous journey, which I've been privileged to have the opportunity to take, it was important to publicize what I'd seen, because nobody else had had that opportunity. And I'd copied what is this? Okay, I used a small digital camera to record 60 gigabytes of stills and video. And I was invited to show a film I'd put together from this material at the House of Commons and the House of Lords at a combined meeting. And then I made 70 copies of it to give to parliamentarians. Then the following year, I returned to Egypt with copies of the DVD and was welcomed back again by His Holiness the Pope, who was very happy that I'd been able to do this. And I gave him a written report. I told him some strange things that had happened to me, and he's got a good sense of humor, fortunately. And he was very gracious about the whole thing. Now, after that, I had a chance to stay with locals, and this is really getting to the grips that we need to get to. In 2016, I was able to stay in a village, in a poor area, where the minority Christian population tends to collect more in Middle Egypt. And it's in these sorts of areas that it's perhaps easiest to find out how best community relations can be improved. Here I am in the main street of the village. This is a member of the family I stayed with. He runs a little shop selling beans and herbs and spices, out of which people make medication because they can't afford industrially produced pharmaceuticals, normally speaking. And because the cost of living is very high, meat is more expensive in Egypt than it is in England, even though the incomes are much lower. A lot of people live on bread and beans, as they used to in ancient Egyptian times. There's a street in the village with a local convenience store, which we jokingly call Tesco's, even though it isn't. Another street this is actually a different village, showing a manhole cover, which is quite rare because they get stolen to be melted down, and then people fall into the holes and some are killed. I know of one man killed in this way and someone else who had to be rescued. So you have to be a bit careful at night time. And this is admittedly a fairly bad house in the village with a particularly poor family in it. Construction methods haven't changed much since pharaonic times. In this case, it's mud brick. Okay, so getting on to particular projects, around in this area, there were some examples of community groups that I was able to link up with and start to work with, which helps everyone, be they Muslims, Christians, or nothing at all. So in agricultural improvements, it was notable that there's a nice project based on a monastery of St. Pachomius, or Anba Bachon in Egyptian, which is a few miles outside of Luxor. And they run farm training, they have cattle, water buffalo, ducks, and they have an apiary making honey. So here I am visiting them. Man on the left there is one of their vets, actually trained in England. Sorry about this. Sorry. Okay, so with the work I was able to do with them, we were able to buy 15 more water buffalo. Or so what, you may say. Actually, water buffalo milk is very nutritious, very creamy, and it helps the nutrition of local children who otherwise might not have nearly enough. So that's quite important. And also, we've been able to improve the conditions for the herd. Here are water buffalo, in case you don't know what they look like. And I visited again since then several times. There's a visit in 2018. Sadly, the abbot died, Abbot Silvanus, I should say. He died in the coronavirus pandemic. Okay, another development is a primary school for children who live in a little town called Tult. school teaches a range of things: Arabic, obviously, Coptic, which is the second language and the ancient language of Egypt, maths, religious studies, good citizenship, and a little bit of English, which I was able to help them with. My Arabic is not fantastic, but I was able to take some English lessons, simple English lessons with them, and I took them a lot of helpful, I hope, books. But without this school, a lot of the local children really would not get any education worth talking about. Again, through the partnership we've set up, they've been able to increase the numbers of children by 50% to 140, which is great, and they've refurbished the school considerably as well. They've also been able to hire a third minibus to bring in children and take them back at night. And they've expanded a chicken farm, which is nearby as well, from 2,000 hens to 3,000, so 5,000, which again is helpful for local jobs and local nutrition. So early in 2018, I had the idea of making a partnership between this little school in Egypt and a little school up on the Hoe in Plymouth, which I'd visited in order to tell the children about children in Egypt, which is something they need to learn about for their curriculum, children across the world. And I had the idea of producing a big poster, tabletop size A0, bilingual poster, saying basically hello from Plymouth to them in Egypt. And individual children in Plymouth made individual mini posters, A4 size. Teachers held up the tabletop size one. I took a picture of this and I went to Egypt with it together with the little posters. And the big poster ended up on the wall in the school in Egypt, as did the small ones as well from Plymouth. Lots and lots of these, there are 30 or 40 of these. They all are on the wall in Egypt. And this is sort of grand opening ceremony. Everyone was very happy. And they're still there today. I saw them. I saw that poster last in January, just a few weeks ago. It's still there, and the friendship and partnership is still continuing. I went around the villages where the children came from, do come from, and these is just some pictures of typical local Upper Egyptian villages. You see, they're pretty crumbly, but this is normal, and the people are very cheerful. As much as you can be, very hospitable. Here's me in the 5 days I think I spent there on that occasion, taking some simple English lessons for them. And then the children held up a big tabletop poster that I prepared in advance to say hello to Plymouth from them there in Egypt. BBC TV and Radio Devon reported on this because it's really the first international interfaith primary school partnership with such considerable differences of geography, culture, language, and everything. Here's the group of children in Plymouth. That is a photo taken by the BBC in their film report. And we followed it up with it since, and it carries on. I was back there again this January. In fact, that's a picture I took in January. The Coptic Christmas is on the 7th of January, so they've just been doing Christmas things. And here are some of the children with some of their Christmas things. So another project has been to try to help learning disabled young people. These people really have nothing useful to do. If they're female, they're kept at home. If they're male, they tend to go out and beg. At least the Coptic community tends to try to avoid that, but it really is difficult for everyone, and it's a wasted opportunity. There's not much provision, if any, for them. And I had the idea, which my Egyptian friends called Fikra Helwa, which means a lovely idea, to produce bracelets, elasticated bracelets, which are easy to make and which could be sold to tourists. So I printed in Plymouth sheets of little sticky labels, bilingual labels. It says Fikra Helwa at the top and lovely idea underneath. I bought 500 or so recyclable plastic bags and lots of beads, and set off again for Egypt. And this is the sort of thing that is being achieved. And rather nice, I think. Simple but nice. Here's a display of all sorts of varieties. We have a current group in Luxor. It's paused temporarily because of COVID, but before the pandemic, we already had young people who are deaf, deaf and dumb, Down syndrome, anencephalic, and those with other disabilities. And it's open to everybody. We have Christians and Muslims, and everyone's very happy. A happy little girl here, she's called Mariam. These two girls have severe learning difficulties. I know their family. Yeah. And there's a sort of group photo at the end. You see that everyone's very happy. Amazingly, the Hilton Hotel near the world famous temple of Karnak in Luxor has agreed to display these Fikra Helwa bracelets in a shop in the lobby. And they're going to be sold with no commission being paid to the Hilton, which is great. And I think it's lovely that they're willing to do that, and it may serve as an example to other projects. Now, we're coming towards the end now of this presentation because it's supposed to be a short video, but there's another project that I got involved with at the very beginnings of this in the Luxor area. Basically, there's an intention to set up a new substance rehabilitation center. I was asked to advise on this. I'm by no means a specialist in this, but I spent 13 years as a Plymouth City councillor, as it happens, and I was either the cabinet member for adult health and social care or the shadow cabinet member for adult health and social care, was therefore the political lead for services in Plymouth, which are always difficult to supply in the way and the quantity required, but it's given me some sensitivity to the needs and maybe some ways to address them. So that's going forward. It's very early stages of this project, but it's kind of them and interesting, I think, to involve me. I also have visited and made contact with Professor Dr. Hamdi Hussain, who's Dean of the College of Medicine at Luxor University. And we're trying to go through the very, very Byzantine complications of permitting a foreigner to have dealings with an Egyptian university. It's quite difficult, but we hope to make progress because there would be synergy for everyone, I think, in enhancing academic and professional interactions between Egyptian universities and British universities. So we hope that will proceed. And Professor Hussain gave me a very warm welcome, and we hope to stay in contact as things develop. And last and not least, Egypt is beginning to introduce a version of the NHS, which is very, very much needed to make it feasible for less well-off people to afford decent treatment. And it's in 3 governorates at the moment, 3 areas within the country. It is developing further, and they are interested in having outside assessment. And as somebody who once trained in auditing in a separate life when I was working for a management consultancy company, and having worked in the NHS and healthcare in a number of different areas, and with this cultural sensitivity to Egypt, they've invited me to take part in that. So I made a beginning. This is a little bit of a description about it. There's a more detailed description in the Lancet in 2018. The reference is given there if you'd like to find it. And it's being run by something called the General Authority of Healthcare, which is sort of the equivalent of the Ministry of Health here. And here I am visiting a hospital in Luxor, briefly, just sort of to make a beginning on this interaction and collaboration, which again, I hope will develop and will, I hope, involve Egyptian professionals and British professionals in cooperative work. So these are just some examples that I've been doing myself without any funding worth talking about, really. Certainly nothing official from universities or governments or whatever. It's largely self-funded, but they are seed crystals from which bigger things can grow. And they may, I hope, give some hints on what might be possible for other people as well. So don't be stopped by lack of resources. It's better to start something, even if it's only small, than it is to just give up and wait for somebody else to do it. And that's it. So thank you very much for watching. That should say dramatic exit, which is what I shall do now.